Life is absolutely horrid. That's it. That's a song. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Dude, that is not cool.
Hey, no, Jason, don't you fucking dare cut that in. I swear to God. I can't do anything anymore on my own fucking show, you piece of shit. You're gonna edit everything in. This is ridiculous. No, don't you edit this in again, you sick All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Well Nothing. This is not a series. I'm just going to be talking about the movie Cuties. Really, actually, I'm not even going to be talking that much about the movie. I'm going to be talking about the ideas surrounding the movie, the themes that the movie represents, and the reasons that the movie was created. I've done some research and read some articles of interviews with the director, as well as I've seen a few interviews on YouTube, with her. And so I'm just going to go over that information and kind of talk about this film because, there's been so much debate and controversy surrounding this. It's absolutely insane. But if you want somebody who's going to talk about in-depth bits of the movie, such as a full review and reaction and all that stuff, definitely go over to my friend Cinema Jacket's channel. I'll have a link to him in the description below. He's going to be doing a movie review, and he watched the film earlier today, and so that way anything more in-depth about the movie itself you can find over there. Again, link in the description to his channel. But besides that, I'm going to be talking, like I said, more about the themes surrounding the movie. So if you don't know what this film is, essentially it is a French film surrounding the sexualization of young girls in bits of Western culture. Now, the director of this film has spoken at length about why she made the film. She said that she was pulling from experiences of her own childhood, of seeing other women be objectified and seeing them be pushed into sexualizing themselves and selling themselves sexually because that's what allowed them to get ahead in the culture. She also states that she had two different cultures that she grew up from. I'm not too sure what the other one besides French is. She had another culture to pull from as well to kind of see the difference between how the French people were treating this stuff and some other Western countries compared to more modest countries where they don't find sexualization of people to be a good thing, period. So, they're more likely to take sex more seriously on a moral level. So that is the reason that the director wanted to apparently make this film. She never specifically stated, from what I could find, that she herself was subject to sexualization at a young age or had ever done anything herself other than just witness the people around her being sexualized and being objectified in their culture. So I've seen people say that she herself was abused when she was younger. I haven't found anything to support that, so I really don't know on that. But again, it's possible, but I've not found anything to fully support that idea. But so she, like I said, she has claimed that she's seen stuff like this in France. And what I mean by stuff is, for example, one scene in the film that's been going around on Twitter is there are a bunch of young girls up on stage dancing, and they are dancing in a very sexually provocative way, and it's very inappropriate, and it's very uncomfortable to watch. Now, the director claims that this is directly from something that she witnessed in Paris as an adult. Apparently, moderately recently, she had seen a concert where young girls, 11 years of age, got up in front of people on stage and was dancing in a sexual manner, twerking, etc. Also, if you didn't know, in places like France or another one that I mentioned earlier, Brazil, pedophilia is extremely common and is not outright punished by the law in all circumstances as it should be. For example, let's talk, I'm not going to touch on Brazil. There's a lot of people that in the commentary community that have talked about Brazil and various very young Brazilian pop singers that would go into bars and get on stage and dance sexually and be provocative in order to garner their family money. There's people like The Right Opinion, James Marriott, etc. that have talked about those subjects at length. So definitely go check out their videos on the pop singers and etc. from Brazil, so you can get more information on that, but I'm mostly going to be talking about France's laws regarding pedophilia today. In France, there is no set age for consent. Essentially, in America, we have a set consent law for 18 years of age. If you're under 18 years of age, you are not legally allowed to consent to any adult having sex with you or anybody else having sex with you. Now, in certain states, they have a lower age of consent. However, usually if it is lower, for example, some states have 16 years, usually if it's lower, you're only allowed to consent to people who are also a minor. So if the law says 16 years of age is the age of consent, usually you're allowed to have sex with other 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. However, 18-year-olds. However, outside of that, you're not really allowed to have sex with anybody above that age limit. Now, this comes in due to Romeo and Juliet laws, and that basically says if you've had sex before turning 18 and you're within 3 years of age, then you are allowed to consent to having sex with that individual. Basically, that's how it works. There's some states that have, say, 17-year-olds are the age of consent, and then so 17-year-olds are allowed to have sex with other 17-year-olds or 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. Usually, again, it'll be within that 3 years. A lot of states don't have Romeo and Juliet laws, though. For example, California no longer does. It was repealed a while back, although they've now kind of minimized various sexual crimes in regards to knocking down the charges to misdemeanors. So if you're a 19-year-old and you're having sex with a 16-year-old, you're likely to get some sort of penalty or jail time potentially. However, it will usually be a misdemeanor rather than being a felony, but we don't have set out Romeo and Juliet laws like a lot of other states do. I really agree with the Romeo and Juliet laws. They make a lot of sense to me. If you're within 3 years of another individual's age, usually I don't see why you wouldn't be able to consent to them. If a 16-year-old wants to have sex with a 19-year-old, that doesn't seem that fucked up to me. Or if, say, a 17-year-old wants to hook up with a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old, that doesn't seem all that fucked up to me either. Ultimately, that's how it works over here in the US. So that's how kind of our consent laws work. That's just a rough basis. Hopefully I made that clear enough. If not, Jason, I'll re-record this. But so hopefully I made that good enough. Jason is my editor. Shout out Jason for editing this. In France, there is no set age for consent, like in America where it is 18 on average. Essentially, there is something considered a sexual minor. Back in the day, it was 11 years old for France. Then they upped it to 13, and then as of I think the 1960s, 1950s, something along those lines, they upped it to 15 as a sexual minor, and then they haven't really touched it beyond that. There's been a push to have a set age of consent. However, there is no age of consent. Now, you may be wondering, well, you said sexual minors, so what does that mean? Now, a sexual minor essentially means that you will have some sort of punishment by law if you do have sex with, say, a person who's under 15 years of age. However, there isn't something that states that they're not allowed to consent. So what that means is if you have sex with, say, a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 11-year-old and you are a grown adult, you can argue that you did cause a sexual infraction by having sex with a legal with somebody that's legally a sexual minor. However, you can argue that they gave you consent, so that way instead of getting a felony charge, you only get a misdemeanor charge, which means you can serve up to 5 years in jail, not prison, jail. And then also usually you'll get some sort of probation, or you'll usually get out quite early. And then also they can charge you a fine. However, that does not usually make you register as a sex offender. And then also you do not have to keep that on your record for extended periods of time if you don't get any other infractions. So it's legally arguable to say that, say, a 13-year-old gave consent if you're in France, and then they would have to look at that by a case-by-case basis, and there has been plenty of cases in France's history that have shown that the courts are willing to say that a child, a minor, can consent. And then, again, that gets them basically that gets the pedophile a slap on the wrist. It basically means like, hey, we don't really give that much of a f***. We're gonna fucking slap you just a little bit. We're just gonna give you a little slap, a little spank on the but it's fine. Just go on. Just don't really cause that much commotion again, and you'll be fine. Like, that's what France kind of thinks of it, because that's how their laws are written. And like I said, there's a large portion of their population that's become aware of this as of recently, and they've been pushing for a legal age of consent, but it doesn't seem like they're any really that much closer to getting an actual age of consent set in France. And anybody that has ever even talked to a 12-year-old knows that a 12-year-old cannot consent. Why? Because they can be manipulated to do whatever you want so easily. You could make them think, like, you could take anything you want from a 12-year-old. You just have to make them think that what you have is worth more somehow, and then they'll give you whatever it is, right? If you're like, hey, I have some candy, that's worth more than you sucking my dick, they'll be like, all right, I'll do that, and then they'll take the candy. That's how stupid 12-year-olds are, and it's not their fault. They're kids. You can't expect them to be intelligent enough to like understand the way the world works. It's ridiculous that in France you can even argue that a 12-year-old would be able to give consent. And that's why the US at least has it right that at least we have some age of consent. These guys don't have any age of consent. So then you have problems like this in France, where France is a culture that doesn't take sex seriously on a moral level. You can find plenty of interviews with French girls talking about how they always have sex on the first date. If they don't have sex with you on the first date, they didn't like you. They want to get sex out of the way first, because if it's not good sex, then they won't want to be with you. Like, there's all sorts of reasons that they say they have sex quickly, but ultimately they are a culture that has removed sex from morality. And when that happens, then you open the door for children to start becoming sexualized, because if there's no reason that sex in general could be morally apprehensible, then you can't say that, say, a kid having sex is morally apprehensible. And the reason I say that is, if you are willing to totally remove sex from morality for yourself, what would say that a kid shouldn't have that agency over themselves if they're able to make their own decisions in some way, shape, or form? Is it because they're naive? Is it because they're innocent? What exactly is it that causes kids to not be allowed to consent? And the reason I ask that is because you need to have that written out strictly in the law. And then I have a question for you. If it's naiveness and if it's innocence, then why is it that we allow an innocent adult to consent? You know, there's all these different things that can play into exactly why the law is written, which is why it's important to have some sort of morality, whether it's a biological morality, a God morality, or whatever the you want to call it, a spiritual morality, some sort of morality attached to sex, and not to just make sex another thing, because it's important that we think of sex on moral and ethical terms rather than just utility terms or etc., because the laws are written very different for things that we find morally apprehensible compared to what is utility-wise and etc. Now, there's plenty of arguments that you can make for both sides of that, but that's how I feel on that debate. And ultimately, the other thing that I need to say with France is that they've totally removed sexual morality, and then so now you see shit where there are these kids going up on stage dancing. There's all these fucking court cases where these people are getting off of pedophilia charges and they're just getting like little fucking misdemeanors essentially. And France has a real fucking issue with this at the moment, and there has been a lot of talk about this in France, and again, luckily that is a good thing. However, it doesn't seem to be getting that much better, and so I think that's why this director decided, hey, let's give people the reality of what the this is. Let's show them exactly what's going on in France. Let's get the world to notice, so that way we can try to make some change. Now, I know that it makes people uncomfortable, and sure, there could be an argument made that pedophiles will get off to that, but also it is bringing forward a real fucking issue that people need to be aware of in order to be able to get rid of it to begin with. Like, that is the whole debate around having these issues, is by talking about them, you're giving more people access to them. However, you have to talk about them to make people aware so we can all vote to get rid of it, or like push to get rid of it. That's a thing that's been going around the commentary community for a long time, is by talking about these channels that these commentary community videos are made on, you're just sending more people their way technically and getting them more famous. So you're really just contributing to the problem, but you have to be able to point out that there's a problem in order to start addressing the problem and working on the issue. And so I have a question as well for people, is if this was a documentary where they went and actually filmed these real girls like these real people that are being exploited and etc. in the moment, and then posted that, onto Netflix, would that be as offensive as the reenactment? And why would it be less offensive if it would be less offensive? And if it would be more offensive, why would it be more offensive? And then if that would be more offensive, is there no way that we can address an issue like this? Are we just supposed to not talk about it and just let what's happening in these different countries just go unspoken of and just push it under the rug continuously? What exactly should we do regarding it? Because again, people are going to have to talk about it in order to realize there's a problem and address it. Yeah, so I mean, that's basically it. Moral of the story, France is really fucked up regarding their laws. I agree that there should be some laws stating that like 16-year-olds should be able to consent to other 16-year-olds. You shouldn't be sending kids to jail for fucking other kids. You're a teenager, you're in high school, you're going to have sex. That's just kind of how life works these days. So like there's a lot of issues regarding America's laws regarding consent, but we have some pretty decent fucking laws regarding consent, I'd say. Like there's some that needs to be fixed, but it's pretty good. And France is totally and we all should be aware of it. We should all be talking about it. I don't know exactly how we can show people how prevalent the issue is without doing like a documentary or a film or something about it. Maybe, I guess, an article would be the only way that you could discuss it without actually showing it in some sort of video format. Yeah, I want to know what you guys think. How should we address this? What was your take on the movie? What do you guys think should be done about this director? If you think this is like pedophilia shit and she's trying to appeal to pedophiles, do you want to see the director do jail time? Like, what is it that what are you all so up in arms about specifically, and how are we supposed to address these issues if we can't even fucking talk about them or show them and show how severe they are? That's it. Thank you guys for joining me during this video. It's been kind of fucking hectic and chaotic and just me rambling off the top of my head about all these things that I had a list. I didn't look at the list one time. I covered all my points luckily, but I just kind of just ran through it, and overall that's all I had to say about the video. Again, go check out Cinema Jacket Productions for the review of the movie. If you don't know, Tim who runs the Cinema Jacket channel. He is super innocent, so to see him review this type of film, I'm definitely going to be intrigued. You can check out my reaction channel that I run with my boy Jason. Again, he edited this video. You can find his information in the description below as well. Yeah, besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Go f*** yourself.
Spaced out of my head to the depths of the universe. It's a spell or a chance just to open up a newer cut.